Hi, everyone. I want to do a quick demonstration today of how to apply color in Illustrator, and specifically how to use swatches and tints to create spot colors, use spot colors. All right, so first off, you're already familiar with the color palette. If I take a shape and select it, so I've just selected a square here on my document, and I come up to the color palette, I can choose a color from the spectrum bar at the bottom, and that color is applied to that shape, right? As I do that, though, notice that what I'm seeing in the color window in that palette is the sort of recipe for that color, explaining how it would be built out of CMYK. That's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. As I choose a different color, these sliders and their percentages that they represent change and tell me, for example, this particular bright lemony yellow is just a little bit of cyan and a lot of yellow. So if this was being printed on a 4-color press, most of this shape would be filled with yellow ink, and there would be a little bit of cyan ink in there as well. Now, another way that we can apply color is using swatches. And some of you have already done this using the swatches palette. That's the little icon here with the squares. And when I look at it, I see it's pre-populated with some default swatches. So if I choose one of those swatches, that color is applied in my document into the shape that I've selected. But you'll notice if I click over to the color tab, if I'm looking at the recipe, this is also a CMYK color. It is also adjustable by changing these sliders, or of course, choosing a different one on the spectrum here. The benefit of the swatches is that by having a color in my swatches palette, I can go back to it again and again and know that I'm getting the exact same color. So if I apply this orange, for example, and I want to make sure I'm using the same color in my next shape that I select, I can go back to that same swatch in my swatches palette, guaranteed to be the exact same color. If I were to try to do that with the color picker in the color palette, I choose a different shape and I try to find an orange that looks just like that, my chances are it's not the same orange. I don't get the exact same values for my CMYK recipe. Okay. Oftentimes, when we're working on a project, you'll find that you have to choose a limited selection of colors for one reason or another. This could be because you're working on something like a logo that only gets one color and we want to make sure it's always going to be the same color. Or it could be that you're printing a project like an invitation and you only have the option to print 2-color inks. So we're going to choose, rather than use cyan or magenta or yellow, we're going to choose 2 colors that we call spot colors, and that color will be mixed up as an ink for printing. To do those spot colors, we have to use something called the color books. Now, color books are found in the swatches palette by clicking on this little library icon. It says swatches library when you roll over it. It looks like a little stack of books on a shelf. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to roll down to color books. The issue of spot colors and swatches has just recently gotten much more complicated because of a licensing issue with what was and has been for many years the most popular swatch system in the United States called Pantone. And I'm not sure how this is going to play out over the long term, but for the moment, what we're going to do is we're going to work with what are called Pantone Plus CMYK. These will appear in your file as a spot color and allow you to adjust their tints. This is what we're going to do in our next assignment. So I'm going to click on Pantone CMYK Coded. You could use coded or uncoded, but they are essentially the same ink colors. They represent themselves on the screen differently because they are trying to represent what they will look like if they are printed on coated paper, something that looks kind of glossy or slick, and uncoated paper, sort of a matte finish. So I'll click coded, and a large library of swatches appears. When I click on any of these swatches, and I'll pick a nice bright reddish color here, that swatch appears in my swatches palette on the right. It gets added to that swatches palette. And you can see that the shape that I had selected also now has that color in it. As I click on other colors, those swatches are also added to my library. So as you're sort of like checking out color possibilities, you might be clicking on multiple colors. What I like to do is have a selection of shapes that I can look at that color kind of large. And I will click on colors in the Pantone library and kind of see what they look like. All right, but I am going to end up with multiple swatches here in my swatches palette. In the end, I want to be sure to eliminate, let's get this out of our way here, eliminate the swatches that I'm not going to use. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to click on this menu icon at the top right corner of where my swatches palette is. So I see the swatches tab and I come over to the right, find that drop-down menu, and I'm going to choose select all unused. So any swatch that's not being used in my file is selected in my swatches palette. It has a little white outline around it. And I can click the trash can at the bottom of the swatches palette to delete that swatch. Okay, so right now I've got this orange and I've got this turquoise. Remember though that this orange is not a Pantone swatch. And I can tell that because when I look at these two swatches, one has a little white corner on it. That tells me it's a Pantone swatch. It's a spot color. The orange is not. So if I want to make sure that I'm only using spot colors, I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to find, I'm going to find an orange that I like that I can use in this particular file. So let's take all of these for a moment. I'm going to make them the same orange. Now my first orange, this lighter orange, is not being used. If I say select all unused, I'm going to select both the turquoise and the lighter orange because they are no longer in my image and I can delete them from my file. Okay. All right, let's add one more color back in here. Okay, I've got a purple and an orange now. Once you've selected your swatches, you can close your Pantone window. If you ever want to get back to it, you have it here in the color books under the swatch libraries, and you can go back and find it. What I'd like to do is just do a little bit of a comparison of these two swatches. I'm going to make a set of purple squares and a set of orange squares. All right, one of the values of using a spot color is that I can adjust that spot color's tint. In fact, this is the way that with a limited range of ink colors, I can get a lot of different values. So once I've applied that spot color, I can change to my color tab here, go to the color palette, and you'll notice that instead of having a set of CMYK sliders, I have a single slider that lists that particular ink color. What we're looking at here is that color at 100%. If I adjust the slider, I'm changing the amount of that color that will print into that square. Okay. So I can adjust the slider manually. I can click on the spectrum below, or I can type in a number. And just so we can sort of evaluate this color, I am going to select each of these squares and make them 20% lighter. So the first square is 100%. The last square is going to be 20%, right? And this gives you an idea of the range of values that this particular color, this particular ink or hue, spot color, will make. Well, kind of the range of what's possible. We'll do the same with the orange. First one's 100, the next one's at 80, 60, 40, and 20%. Right? What this allows is for me to overlap shapes that are the same color, but different values. And when I eliminate the outlines, so I'm going to get rid of my stroke. I'm going to tell it I want no stroke. When I eliminate those outlines, I can still see the edges of those shapes. I can start to build contours and forms by using a variety of shades together. Okay. Let's do just one more swatch here. Something to think about when you're choosing swatches for an illustration. You will always need at least one very dark value, something to be the dark edges of things, the shadows, the deep recesses. So I'm going to go back to my swatch library, to color books, and choose the Pantone coded colors again. And I just want to point out that within every color, pretty much, there's going to be there are going to be some lighter versions of it, and there are going to be darker versions. And you can find the darkest version and use it as your deep shadow and still have some lighter colors to work with. So as an example, if I were looking for the darkest possible purple, I might choose this. Apply this over here so we can look at it. Oops. Not to the stroke. To the fill. There we go. All right. I'm going to change the tints, right? I come over to the color tab. I'm going to just look at what this looks like, because at first glance, this just looks pretty black. But you'll notice as I adjust these lighter tints that this is in fact a purple color. Right? Let's make a copy of that. If I choose a really dark blue, I have a really dark value to work with, but I also have a pretty nice light blue. I can find greens that are like that. The place where you aren't going to find that is in the super bright colors, yellows. The oranges, a really, really dark orange is basically brown, and it's not going to be a bright orange at the lightest color. I also want to point out that at the very bottom of the Pantone swatches, way down here, are a variety of like near blacks. I say near black because every black is going to have, every rich black is going to have a little bit of some other colors mixed into it. So some of these are a little bit warmer, some of these are a little bit cooler. So I don't know, let's see. There's a few at the very end here. These are probably your most neutral. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see that better. But some of these, as I choose these very darkest colors down here, it's basically black, but as I look at the lighter tones, I realize there's quite a bit of green in this particular one. Or here's one that has a lot of red mixed in, so it's kind of warm in tone. So choose your colors carefully. You're going to want to choose a set of 3 Pantone colors for this next assignment, for the portrait assignment. And once you settle on your 3 colors, you're going to make sure you have at least one that can give you dark shadows. Your others can be bright or medium or dark. It depends on the sort of like character that you're trying to portray. And anything that you are not using, you're going to delete from your swatches palette. When you create your set of swatches for Thursday, thinking about the colors that you might use, what I would like you to do is to create a set of squares. You're going to end up with 3 swatches. something like this, that shows us the 3 colors, the 3 ink colors that you're going to use in your illustration. That's the limit. Select all your unused swatches in the swatches palette and delete. I will mention there are always going to be black, white, what's called registration and none. Those swatches will be there forever. But what you should see in your swatches palette are only 3 spot colors with the little white triangles at the corner. All right, I hope that helps you understand how to apply spot colors. And that's what you'll need to do for your illustration. Thanks.